Today, we're taking a look at one of the best business jets you can get in 2024. Of course, I'm talking about the FlightFX Citation X. So stick around and join me as we take it for a full flight in 2024. And I'll show you why exactly you should check out this aircraft. So here we are in the first rendition of the Simblitz Hangar. She's not perfect and it's got plenty far to go, but here she is, the amazing FlightFX Citation X. It has to be one of the most sleek and elegant looking business jets out there, and also possibly the most study level business jet we have in 2024 at the moment, but we'll get into that. And as you can see, we've got the walk around mode in action. So right now I'm just showing that you can open the luggage door, take the engine covers off. There's not too much interaction on the walk around mode, I'm going to be honest. You can also take away the chocks and even remove the pitot tube covers and open the main door. But that's it. But man, does this jet look good. I just can't get over how sleek and beautiful this thing is. It's so good to finally have the Citation X in Flight Sim. The last decent Citation X that we had in Flight Simulator was probably an X-plane. So with that said, let's pull out of the hangar, go on the apron, and we'll start preparing for our flight. So for today's flight, we've got a real special passenger. I'll let you guys figure out who it is, but before that, let's briefly go over the flight plan. We're going to be doing a rather short hop for this aircraft. We're going to be going from Reno to Las Vegas. It's about an hour flight time, but it'll still give us a chance to take it all the way up to 45,000 feet. So we'll be departing Reno VFR, and we'll get our IFR once up in the air down to Las Vegas. So in terms of flight plan, really simple and easy. And the weather's absolutely perfect for the flight as well. Departing Reno this afternoon, it'll be clear skies. We won't even see any clouds really until we start getting down into Las Vegas, and even then it's going to be around 30 degrees with some scattered clouds, which should make for an absolutely stunning arrival. So I'm just going to flip on the batteries here and get the aircraft started. We'll get the APU rolling as well. I've done a couple of flights to kind of familiarise myself with the aircraft. I was going to dive straight into it, but I quickly figured out it kind of is study level in its own right. I'm not sure if the developers are claiming it to be study level, but be prepared to open up the manual and give it a read because you might need it to get the systems running properly. Once you kind of get a basic understanding of the aircraft, it's really quite simple and intuitive to work through. And the aircraft comes feature packed as well. So you've got your usual things like SimBrief integration. This is done through the FMC and you can import your flight plan directly. And you've also got a pretty sleek and really nice EFB. And that EFB isn't exactly the most advanced one I've seen. However, it does exactly everything that it needs to. So you've got things like Navigraph integration, along with being able to import the weights from SimBrief and set the weights of the aircraft. And for those who don't have Navigraph, there's also a generic map option to help you navigate. And then you've got your ground/ramp control where you can set the chocks, the engine covers, open doors and a few other things like that. Other than that, the EFB just features a config where you can set up your throttles and set the correct detents. But other than that, the EFB doesn't do a whole lot, and it doesn't really need to. It does everything just right. And one of the things I love that they really went that extra mile for is the adjustment you can do to the EFB. Because the cockpit is quite small and cramped, other than just being able to hide the EFB, you can move it on just about every axis and it works perfectly. So you can really just click and drag on each corner and be able to adjusts the rotation, the angle, how far in or out it is. Just, it really is over the top. And of course, you can hide it to the pocket down below. But with all that out of the way, it's time to get the show on the road. The doors are all locked and the cabin's secure, so I'm going to start up the engines and we'll begin our short taxi over to runway 32. Man, I just love the sounds of these engines on startup. They sound phenomenal. And across the whole aircraft, the sound package is really nice. But taxiing the aircraft feels really nice. The only issue I've kind of found is it's quite quick. The engines are really big on the aircraft, so it can quickly run away from you. So as long as you're watching your speeds while taxiing, you shouldn't have any issues. The only other thing I really noticed is it feels quite twitchy on the ground with my rudder pedals. Now I've got the Honeycomb Charlie pedals on the completely standard setting, so there's no profile with any dampening or anything, which means the twitchiness can easily be tuned out. But other than that, the aircraft just feels great on the ground. It's obviously a lot more nimble and easier to turn than a lot of the other aircrafts I fly. Compared to the 737s and A320s, this thing just goes where you want. It's like a sports car. But here we are, lining up on runway 32. So as always, I'll be quiet now so you can listen to the engine sounds. Just note as well, there are some sound bugs in the recording. This isn't due to the aircraft at all. I think it's a mixture between the new sim update and me pre-recording the flight. And just like that, we're soaring out of here like a rocket ship. This thing absolutely flies. It is incredible the performance this aircraft has. But we'll continue our climb here out of Reno, and we're going up to flight level 450, which I think is the highest altitude SimBrief has ever given me before. But otherwise, we've been told to go direct to Bravo Tango Yankee, and we can skip Keno. So I've smashed that into the FMC while we're climbing up here. But while we climb and get into our cruise, let's talk about the aircraft and all its features and what I think about it. So for those who don't know the FlightFX brand, they've made some phenomenal aircrafts that you're probably familiar with, such as the SF50 Vision Jet, the H-Jet, their P180, and now the C750 or the Citation X. And especially for their most two recent aircraft being the P180 and the Citation X, they've really taken it to the next level, especially in the cabin. Just about everything is clickable. You can open drawers, tables, blinds, all kinds of things. And they're very solid products. And what I mean by that is the modelling is superb. The textures are really good. Their sounds are really nice. They're definitely not the best sound package out there, but they're really good. And I think a lot of people are also quite surprised by their pricing. For the Citation X, I paid around $44 Australian. And it's rare that I say this, but for those $44 I spent, it feels pretty good for value. I just want to be clear and say that I have no type rating in the Citation X. I don't have any experience really in business jets. The most experience I have in terms of Cessnas is in the 172s, the 150s, and that's about it. The only reason I preface this is because when I say words like study level, it can be very easily misunderstood because everyone has their own definition of study level. To me, the definition of study level is meaning that you kind of have to do a bit of studying. You need to read the manual, you need to understand the flows of the checklist in order to operate the aircraft properly. And to support that, the aircraft has enough fidelity that the real world flows and checklists will work correctly in the simulator. Now that second part, I've got no idea if the citation is correct on because I've never flown one in real life. I don't have any experience, and to be quite honest with you, I haven't even been lucky enough to see one in real life yet. But with that said, from what I've been able to tell and my personal experience in flight simulation and limited real-world aviation, it definitely feels, quote, study level in my opinion. And as I said, to me that means that I can follow checklists and flows and they feel correct. The aircraft behaves in the way that I'd interpret it to. You're able to use this aircraft on VATSIM. It has enough system depth that I'd happily say it's study level. And the only areas I'd personally critique it in, and not really that it's a big issue, but with the rise of 2024 and people slowly making that switch, a lot of developers are now taking a lot more opportunities of the new features, especially Phoenix. So if we look at Phoenix and their most recent update, the BFU for 2024, the interactions that we can do with the aircraft are absolutely amazing. And that's where I kind of feel, I guess, it falls short. We can remove the chocks, open the main door, the cargo door, put the engine covers on and the pitot tube covers, but that's it. But I also get there's not a whole lot of doors or compartments on this aircraft. So it'd be nice if you were able to open the cargo storage in the front nose cone. Just a few other small things like that. Again, there's not a lot I can critique on this aircraft because it really is a very nice polished off aircraft. And they also make it really easy to use. One of the things that kind of tosses me between things is whether you go ultimate realism or you make it simple and enjoyable for the user. For example, CSS kind of go ultra realism with their aircraft. And what I mean by that is there's no support for beyond ATC. The radios don't auto-tune. There's no support for controllers to set headings or altitudes or anything like that. You have to do it all by hand. It's an older aircraft and it is a pain to fly. But in comparison, if you look at aircrafts like the iFly and the PMDG, although they're a lot newer, they do have click spots for simple things that are out of reach, for example, the toga button. And just like that, FlightFX also does it for the altitude, the heading and the CDI. Because those knobs are down on the pedestal, you have to look away from the aircraft to tune those things. So they've very nicely marked out a few screws that you can tune the heading, the altitude and the CDI. And it's features like this that make the aircraft a lot more enjoyable to fly. And just going back to my last point, the only other thing I would critique is the icing model. There's icing model on the windows and that's it. So the cockpit windows and the cabin windows, they do a real nice job on the icing there. I'm not sure if it's the default flight simulator model and texturing or whatnot, but other than that, you won't see any icing build up on the aircraft. Even if you set it to max in the dev mode, you won't see it form on the wings, none on the stabilizer, none on the nose, none on the tail, anything like that. Which again is a very minor thing, it doesn't matter a whole lot to me, but for those of you that fly in very icy climates, maybe that might be a big thing for you. But again, the critiques I really have to look quite hard at, and they're not really critiques, I guess they're just things I'd like to see. The aircraft for a release came out extremely polished and well done, exactly how add-ons should be released. But either way, they're just my opinions. I might be completely wrong, But let me know down below if you guys have checked it out yet and what you think. And with that said, we've reached our top of descent. It was a rather quick flight, especially being up at 45,000 feet. So now in order to land at Las Vegas, we've got to get down pretty quickly. So here we are, we've been vectored in for the ILS 26 left at Las Vegas. Now again, I don't have a lot of experience with this aircraft. I've only flown it a couple of times. And in order to get the best feel for the aircraft, I'm going to fly it by hand. So once we get lined up for the runway, I'll switch off the autopilot and I'll be feeling it all through my crappy joystick. But in terms of down to the approach here, the FMC handled everything perfectly. I had to use flight level change a couple of times just because I was so high up and needed to get down quite quickly, and everything handled perfectly. Nothing went wrong, it just works out of the box, plain and simple. I know a lot of people have been having issues with Sim Update 3, but man does 2024 look good. So here we are on final, and I've been hand flying it for a little bit now, and it just feels phenomenal. It just flies perfectly. Once you trim it out, it's just buttery smooth, and I genuinely can't think of anything to really fault the aircraft on. It just plain and simply works, and it's really fun to fly.
Don't sink.
And after our short hop here, it's time to bring this flight to an end. So sit back while I try and butter this landing. And if that's not the definition of a butter landing, I don't know what is. What a great way to end this. Perfectly nailed the landing. But as we begin our taxi over to the ramp, I just want to finish up by saying this aircraft is truly amazing. Out of the box, it just works. There's no bugs or issues you have to work around. There's a comprehensive manual that's really easy to get you up to speed and familiar with the avionics. The team have done a wonderful job with this aircraft, just like all their other ones. For anyone that loves GA, this aircraft is absolutely a must-have. And even people that don't, seriously, give it a try. It is just amazing. For the price, you really can't complain. But I cannot thank you guys enough for watching and supporting me on this journey. You guys have been killing it with the support, and I truly cannot thank you enough. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like. If you could subscribe, it'd help me out a ton. And let me know down in the comments if you guys want to see more reviews and content like this, and just let me know what you thought. And don't forget to join the Discord. We're slowly building an amazing community, and I can't do it without you guys. But until next time, I'll catch you then.